I was not an A student at Carroll. I was one of those students who had some challenges earlier. I started off as a pre-med student, which is ironic given the fact that I'm now the CEO of a hospital. But I found out fairly quickly that maybe academically, medicine was not the field that I was intended to go into, and I had to pivot. I had some great counselors. I had faculty who helped guide me, and it's how I ended up going into a business degree. I think like 4 credits shy from getting my diploma. So I needed to find some sort of course to take that would allow me to get the credits that I wanted. The dean of academics actually tutored me to allow me to get the credits that I needed to finally graduate from Carroll. And it was the reality of how much the faculty and administration cared about the students, and they showed that in the way they interacted with us. When I graduated from law school, I was also at another point in my life where I had a law degree, and the question was, so what am I going to do? I made the decision to come back to Chicago because at the time that I graduated, Harold Washington became mayor. Harold Washington was the first African-American mayor in the city of Chicago. That's where all the action's going to be. I don't know what I'm going to do, but this is where I want to be, because with a new mayor, new administration here, there'll be a lot of opportunities. I was introduced to the general counsel of the Chicago Transit Authority, a woman by the name of Joyce Hughes. Joyce was an appointee of Mayor Washington, and she was looking for an attorney to bring in to actually become her assistant. I knew nothing about transportation, other than as a kid I rode the CTA to go to and from school. So I thought at the time that this would be like a 5-year stint. Lo and behold, as is the case in the field of public transportation, I caught what we refer to as the bug. And the bug was a recognition of the impact that public transportation has on the communities that we serve. I realized very quickly that I could do more in a short amount of time working for CTA than I probably would get in a decade of working in the private sector. And so I stuck. I stayed around.
Dorval knew how to bring his relationships and his experience to the table in a way that moved CTA forward in ways that will forever be a mark on this agency. He could quickly figure out what was needed in situations. By and large, Dorval will be remembered for the massive capital investment that happened under his time at CTA, most notably the Red Line extension funding that occurred right at the end of his tenure at the Chicago Transit Authority, which is one of the most historic things to have come to our agency in our history. And with extending the Red Line to the south side, those stations and that infrastructure will forever be a part of Chicago, and Dorval is the reason that that project is happening.
I never thought in my entire life that I would actually know the President of the United States, and he asked me, do you know anybody who might want to fill the political position for one of his attorneys? I said, sure, I know a lot of people. Let me give you some names. I know everyone in the industry. And then after about 5 minutes, he stopped me and he said, well, actually, I was kind of hoping you might consider. And that is how I became a part of the Obama administration. I did that for 4 years. The then Secretary of Transportation was looking for a person to come into the Secretary's office. I went from a political appointee in one of the smaller agencies within the Department of Transportation to the political appointee who, quite honestly, is in one of the top jobs within the entire department itself, overseeing over 200,000 employees, managing the day-to-day activity of the department, and interacting directly with the White House.
Dorval has an understanding of how vast organizations impact people's daily lives and the roles and responsibilities of the leaders of those organizations to make decisions in a way that have those people in mind every day. He is unafraid of massive budgets and big decisions because he is familiar with them, and he approaches very complex, deep-rooted problems that bring solutions to problems that many others can't figure out.
The mayor of the city of Chicago called me. Mayor Emanuel basically said, you spend a lot of time playing around in Washington, D.C., do you want to come back and do a real job? And he said, I want you to run the Chicago Transit Authority. And so he offered me the job of president of the CTA, to be able to come back to the agency that I grew up in and that I'd done 2 stints in, had worked my way up through the ranks in, and to now lead it. It was the first time in almost 40 years that there had been a transportation professional put in charge of CTA. The St. Anthony story is a very different story for me. It's a much more personal story. My dad was chair of obstetrics and gynecology. Growing up, I would come to the hospital from time to time to see him. I was in complete awe of the way he conducted himself and the way he was loved and appreciated by the people at this hospital. I couldn't imagine a better way to close out my career than to go to the hospital that my dad had worked at, and that the maternity wing of the hospital is named after my parents. I tend to go back to the values that my parents taught me about caring for others, treating everyone with respect, giving back to the community that you serve. Those values were sort of embedded in me by my parents, but then they were amplified. They were amplified at Carroll. It is a source of energy for me to be a part of that community and to be a part of supporting what that institution is doing. I started getting engaged at Carroll again when the African American students asked me to come up to speak to them. I so loved the engagement with the students at one point in time, I got involved with the Alumni Council. And once I got involved with the Alumni Council, that led to me becoming the head of the Alumni Council. For whatever reason, whenever I join something, it's not enough for me just to be a member. At some point in time, I have to become part of the leadership of that something. And lo and behold, within a year or two, I started getting identified to take on a much bigger role, a much bigger responsibility. I think a lot of that is just because I care a lot about the stuff that I picked to do. And it was embedded in me in the public sector, because the people who go into the public sector don't go there because they're going to make a lot of money. They don't go there because they think they're going to get huge recognition. They go there because they care and they want to give back. And in doing that, I've been fortunate enough to be in positions where I've been able to lead that effort, to have that impact, to change the way our communities exist because of the work that I've done. And when I look at my career, and I look at the things that I've done and the things that I'm continuing to do, I don't have any question about that. I'm very comfortable with the legacy that I've created for myself and the impact that I've had on the communities that I've served.